Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There is a silent enemy that robs millions of their potential, not because it's loud or dangerous, but because it's familiar, warm, and deceptive. It's called your comfort zone. And today, I want to show you how this seemingly harmless place may be the very thing standing between you and your destiny. You see, life was never designed for you to merely exist. You were created to manifest, to multiply, to subdue, and to have dominion. But you cannot dominate a world you're afraid to step into. The comfort zone is seductive. It whispers, stay here, it's safe, don't risk it, don't stretch, don't dream too big. But listen to me carefully, everything you were born to do lies outside of that zone. When God called Abraham, he didn't say, stay where it's easy. He said, leave your father's house, your country, and go to a land I will show you. Notice, he didn't show him first. He required movement before manifestation. Why? Because purpose is always on the other side of obedience, not comfort. Your comfort zone is not a location, it's a mindset. It's the attitude that says, I've done enough, this is good enough, let someone else do more, but let me tell you, enough is the enemy of excellent, and comfortable is the cousin of mediocre. You cannot discover what's inside you until life demands more from you than you think you can give. The eagle was designed to fly, but it never realizes its power until it's pushed out of the nest. And sometimes God will disturb your nest not to destroy you, but to develop you. Hear me, faith doesn't function in ease. Faith thrives in uncertainty. The scriptures say, the just shall live by faith, and not live by comfort, and not live by convenience, but by faith. You want to know why you feel unfulfilled, why you wake up with a gnawing sense that there's more, because there is more, but more is waiting for you to get uncomfortable. Your comfort zone is killing your calling. It is time to stop making excuses, stop waiting for the perfect moment, stop hiding behind fear and start walking by faith. Because your generation is waiting, not for your excuses, but for your emergence. Comfort is one of the most dangerous places a person can dwell, not because it harms the body, but because it numbs the mind and silences the call of purpose. When you become too comfortable, you lose your hunger, and when your hunger dies, so does your drive to grow, to strive, and to fulfill your potential. The comfort zone is not a place of rest, it is a place of slow decay. It is where dreams go to die, not with violence, but with quiet resignation. You see, comfort gives you the illusion of security, but it quietly robs you of your growth. It seduces you into thinking that you've arrived, that what you have is enough, that there's no need to go further. But what you may not realize is that comfort is the enemy of progress. When you settle, you stop stretching, and when you stop stretching, you stop expanding. You cannot reach new heights when your feet are planted in the soil of what's familiar. In the world of nature, everything that is alive grows. A tree that stops growing begins to die. Muscles that are never exercised become weak. A mind that is never challenged becomes dull, and a spirit that is never tested remains immature. The same principle applies to your purpose. Your calling demands your evolution. It requires you to move, to shift, to adjust, and to break out of patterns that no longer serve your future. But comfort fights against that process. It says, why change when this is working? Why leave when you're accepted here? Why try something new when this feels safe? But let me tell you something vital. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it's good for you. Comfort is not always a blessing. Sometimes it is a burden in disguise. The longer you stay in a comfortable situation that does not challenge you, the more likely you are to become complacent. Complacency is a silent killer of potential. It doesn't attack you with a roar, it seduces you with a whisper, relax, you've done enough. But if your assignment on earth is not complete, then enough is not enough. What's worse is that when you become too comfortable, you begin to protect what you have instead of pursuing what you were made for. You start building fences around the familiar rather than digging deeper wells of vision. You begin to fear the very thing that was designed to make you grow, discomfort. But discomfort is not your enemy. It is your evidence that you are moving forward. It is your proof that you are no longer living beneath your capacity. Staying in a comfort zone is a decision to survive instead of thrive. It is a choice to repeat instead of innovate. It is a habit of circling the same mountain year after year when you are called to conquer new territory. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness. They became so accustomed to wandering that they started calling it home. They became comfortable with manna falling from the sky, forgetting that God was leading them to a land flowing with milk and honey. That is the tragedy of comfort. It can blind you to the promise in front of you. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you delay your development. Every time you choose ease over effort, you shrink your influence. Growth requires pain. Progress requires pressure. And destiny requires disruption. You cannot carry greatness in your spirit and live in comfort at the same time. Greatness demands that you wake up from the slumber of complacency and answer the call to something greater. Purpose is not found in what is predictable, nor is it revealed in the spaces where everything is under your control. Purpose lives in motion. It shows itself as you take steps forward into unknown territory. When you cling too tightly to what is safe, you limit what can be seen, what can be stretched, and what can be shaped in you. The comfort zone may offer peace, but it robs you of perspective. It keeps you looking inward rather than outward. It causes you to preserve rather than pursue. And when preservation becomes the goal, purpose is postponed. God never called anyone to a life of ease. Every person in history who walked in purpose had to walk away from something first. Abraham had to leave his country. Moses had to leave the palace. Peter had to leave the boat. Comfort and calling do not coexist. One must be sacrificed for the other. The tragedy is that many choose the former. They trade the vast unknown of purpose for the small certainty of comfort. But comfort is a cage. It may have cushions, but it has no windows. And if you cannot see beyond your present environment, you cannot be led by vision. Purpose speaks a different language than comfort. Comfort asks, is it safe? Purpose asks, is it right? Comfort says, will I be liked? Purpose says, will I be obedient? Comfort wants applause. Purpose demands sacrifice. And those who confuse comfort for calling will always choose what feels good over what bears fruit. But the truth is, fruit doesn't grow on the tree of ease. It grows in the soil of obedience, watered by discomfort and harvested by faith. Many people are waiting for purpose to show up in their quiet moments, in their dreams, in their reflections. But purpose doesn't come when you sit still. It comes when you take steps. It shows itself not to the thinker, but to the mover. It reveals itself when you respond to the nudge, when you make the hard decision, when you leave the crowd to pursue the call. And sometimes it only becomes clear after you've said yes. The calling comes with clarity, not before it. The danger of waiting to feel ready is that readiness is often an illusion. You will never feel ready for what stretches you, and you will never be comfortable doing what you've never done before. But that is exactly where purpose lives, in the tension between who you are and who you're called to become. Purpose doesn't require perfect conditions. It requires a willing heart and a faithful step. When you wait for certainty, you miss the invitation, and purpose is always an invitation. Never a guarantee, never a formula, never a map. It is a voice that says go, even when you don't know where the road leads. Sometimes the reason you haven't discovered your purpose is because you're not moving. You're analyzing, you're praying, you're strategizing, but you're not obeying. And obedience often precedes understanding. The step must come before the confirmation. If you wait to know everything before you do anything, you will never do the one thing you were born to do. Purpose is revealed in the process, and the process begins when you leave what's comfortable. Even in Scripture, we see that miracles didn't come to those who stayed where it was easy. The waters didn't part until Moses raised his staff. The walls didn't fall until they marched. The loaves didn't multiply until they were broken. Movement activated manifestation. Action triggered revelation, and the same is true in your life. You won't find what you were made to do if you refuse to leave what you've always done. The deeper questions of life are not answered in the shallow waters of convenience. They are answered in the deep places, where your feet can't touch the ground, and your faith becomes your anchor. Faith is not a concept designed for stillness. It was never intended to sit quietly within the comfort of routine or the safety of predictability. Faith was built for movement. It was created to walk, to step, to press forward even when clarity is absent and certainty is nowhere to be found. Faith functions best not in the comfort zone, but in the unknown. It thrives where logic fails and where human strength is not enough. If everything around you makes sense and requires no risk, then faith is unnecessary. Faith begins where your ability ends and where your trust in God must take over. When a person becomes too attached to what they can control, they stop relying on faith. They start building their lives around facts instead of truth. But facts will tell you the door is closed. Faith tells you to knock anyway. Facts will remind you of your past failures. Faith says your history doesn't cancel your destiny. Comfort keeps you rooted in facts, but faith compels you to act based on a higher conviction, a vision that transcends what is seen and reaches into the realm of what is promised. And this is where many people remain stuck. They are waiting for guarantees when God is waiting for movement. Faith without works is dead, not because works are the goal, but because faith is action-oriented. It is not passive. It does not wait for a sign in the sky or a perfect environment. Faith responds to instruction. When Peter stepped out of the boat, the water didn't become solid before he moved. He stepped while the storm still raged. He walked in the same place others stayed seated. The boat represented safety, but safety was never where Jesus stood. Jesus was in the unknown, calling Peter not to a place, but to a posture of belief. Movement is the proof of faith. When you move despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the uncertainty, you declare with your life that you trust something greater than yourself. Faith requires steps even when the staircase is invisible. But many remain in their comfort zones not because they don't have faith, but because they've never exercised it. Faith, like a muscle, must be used to grow. If you never put it under pressure, it will never gain strength. And without strength, you won't have the capacity to carry your purpose. Staying still may feel spiritual. It may look like wisdom, but in many cases, it is simply hesitation covered in religious language. "I'm waiting on God" is often an excuse used by people who are afraid to make a move, but waiting is not passive. Biblical waiting is always active. It is listening, preparing, stepping in obedience as doors open. It is trusting the timing of God, yes, but also aligning your movement with His direction. Faith listens, but it also walks. It hears, but it also acts. Every major moment of transformation in Scripture was preceded by a step of obedience. No one fulfilled their purpose by standing still and hoping everything would come to them. Even in the wilderness, the children of Israel were led by movement. When the cloud moved, they moved. When the pillar of fire shifted, they followed. They didn't negotiate with the direction. They didn't ask for every detail. They moved, and in their movement they were guided, provided for, and shaped. The lesson is simple. When God says move, don't wait for full understanding. Just obey. Faith does not need the whole picture. It only needs a word. One instruction is enough to begin. One yes can unlock destiny. But if your feet never leave the place of comfort, your faith remains theory instead of truth. Fear is a master of disguise. It rarely shows up in its raw form. Instead, it cloaks itself in language that sounds reasonable, in decisions that seem cautious, and in attitudes that appear wise. But at its core, it is not wisdom. It is hesitation. It is resistance. It is a subtle force that keeps you planted in a place that feels safe, but slowly kills your potential. Many people are not living by wisdom. They are living by fear disguised as prudence. They are not seeking counsel. They are seeking permission to stay small. Fear wears the mask of logic, but its true intention is to limit. It will whisper to you saying, "Be careful, take your time, you don't want to make a mistake." And while these statements may have value in the right context, fear doesn't use them for protection. It uses them for paralysis. It tells you to wait until you know everything. It convinces you to hold off until the risks are gone. It tells you to choose what's safe instead of what's necessary. But the reality is, if you're going to fulfill your purpose, you will have to do things afraid. You will have to move while uncertain. You will have to act when the outcome is not guaranteed. Wisdom and fear do not produce the same fruit. Wisdom leads to clarity, strength, and direction. Fear leads to delay, doubt, and missed opportunities. Wisdom builds, fear blocks. The person who confuses the two will live a life of cautious regret, always wondering what could have been if they had just trusted beyond their feelings. Fear is not sent to protect you. It is sent to prevent you from becoming who you were created to be. It wants to shrink your world until it is small enough for you to manage without faith. God has never required certainty to give direction. He has never demanded full comprehension before requiring obedience. He calls people into the unknown not to confuse them but to form them, and that call almost always confronts your fears. That is why fear fights so hard to sound like wisdom. Because if you recognized it for what it truly was, you would resist it. But when fear masquerades as intelligence, you invite it in. You call it stewardship. You call it planning. You call it being responsible. But what you are really doing is building a case for staying where it's comfortable. Purpose will always lead you into moments where fear and wisdom seem to speak at the same time. But you must learn to discern the voice of the Spirit from the echo of your insecurity. The Spirit of God will never lead you into bondage. It will never confirm your excuses. It will never validate your stagnation. If the wisdom you're following results in you doing nothing, saying nothing, building nothing, starting nothing, trusting nothing, then it is not wisdom. It is fear with a mask. Many are not stuck because of external limitations. They are stuck because fear has convinced them that stillness is safety. But stillness without purpose is stagnation. And when you stagnate, your potential remains buried. What could have been birthed in boldness dies in silence. You do not need full knowledge to take the first step. You need faith. You do not need guarantees to be obedient. You need courage. Fear will always demand evidence before it moves. Faith moves first and lets the evidence follow. Fear will always come when you're about to grow. It will always raise its voice when you're about to step into something greater. It will use anything it can: logic, past pain, opinions of others, your own inner doubt, to keep you grounded in the familiar. But purpose does not ask for your comfort. It asks for your obedience, and obedience cannot be conditional on how safe something feels. It must be anchored in what is true. Inside every human being lies untapped potential. Gifts, talents, ideas, and abilities that have never been activated simply because they have never been demanded. Potential does not come alive in ease. It comes alive in adversity. It is not developed through convenience, but through challenge. When everything around you is comfortable, there is no need to dig deeper. There is no pressure to rise. There is no urgency to evolve. But the moment you are placed in an uncomfortable position, what has been dormant within you begins to stir. Pressure pulls potential to the surface. The seed does not release its power until it is buried. The olive does not release its oil until it is crushed. Gold is not purified until it passes through fire. And likewise, your true strength, your true creativity, your true resilience, these are not discovered in seasons of relaxation, but in moments of resistance. The situations you are trying to avoid may be the very things assigned to unlock what is hidden in you. You don't know how strong your voice is until you are required to speak up. You don't know how powerful your faith is until it is tested. You don't know the depth of your wisdom until you are placed in a dilemma. Most people think their gifts will show up naturally when the time is right. But gifts don't show up just because time passes. They are awakened by necessity. The man who has never been challenged will always assume he has reached his limit. But once he is placed in a position where he must act, where he must lead, where he must stretch, then and only then will he see what has been within him all along. You do not rise to your level of dreams. You rise to your level of preparation, and discomfort is often the furnace in which preparation is forged. Adversity is not always sent to destroy. Sometimes it is sent to define. It reveals what cannot be seen in calm seasons. It shows you who you really are. You can sing when life is good, but can you sing in sorrow? You can lead when everyone agrees, but can you lead when there's conflict? You can believe when the answers come quickly, but can you believe when heaven is silent? That is where potential becomes visible. That is where the unseen becomes evident. Not in the shallow waters of ease, but in the deep waters of demand. Comfort does not call out your best. It pampers your past and protects your preferences. It tells you that you've done enough, that you've come far enough, that you're successful enough. But there is more in you than you've seen. There are ideas you haven't written, solutions you haven't built, messages you haven't spoken, mountains you haven't climbed. The reason you haven't accessed them is not because they don't exist, it's because you've not been forced to reach for them. You've not been pushed past your current level. Some of the greatest achievements in history were born out of hardship. When the environment required something extraordinary, ordinary people discovered what they carried. They didn't feel ready, they weren't the most educated, they weren't the most equipped, but they were placed in a position where they could no longer remain hidden. And when the demand rose, so did they. You too have greatness lying dormant inside you, not because you haven't tried, but because you haven't been pressured. The season you fear might be the very soil your future needs. The challenge you avoid may be the training ground for your next level. When you stop resisting discomfort, you begin to grow. When you stop protecting your comfort, you start accessing your calling. Your gifts do not come fully formed. They come in seed form, and seeds require conditions that often feel like breaking. But it is not the breaking that destroys. It is the breaking that activates. There is a vast difference between existing and living. Many people are alive biologically but have stopped living purposefully. They move through life maintaining routines, fulfilling obligations, chasing comfort, and calling it success. But real life, life in its fullest sense, is not found in repetition without reason. It is found in discovery, in risk, in obedience to purpose, in the pursuit of something greater than what is known. The comfort zone is not a place of life. It is a place of maintenance. It is where people go to manage survival, not where they go to release significance. You are not created to merely survive, to go through the motions and call it peace. You were created to live fully, and fullness begins where comfort ends. Life at its core is movement. Everything living moves. Trees stretch toward the sun, rivers flow through valleys, the human heart beats without rest. When you stop moving, something inside you begins to deteriorate. You may not see it on the outside, but inwardly your drive lessens, your vision fades, and your spirit becomes dulled. The comfort zone offers no stimulation for purpose. It offers no requirement for excellence. It rewards nothing but staying the same, and in that sameness, life begins to shrink. Dreams are postponed. Ideas are shelved. Convictions are softened. Before long, you become a shell of what you could be, surrounded by what is predictable, but unfulfilled in what is meaningful. Living requires you to choose what is uncommon. It requires you to walk roads that are not paved by the crowd. It means you must think beyond what others approve of and act beyond what is easy. The pursuit of purpose is always uncomfortable because it calls for sacrifice. It demands that you leave what you know for what you are becoming, and most people are unwilling to make that exchange. They settle for the known even if it is uninspiring, rather than risk the unknown where destiny is waiting. But you cannot be fully alive while remaining chained to what is familiar. Every time you choose comfort over courage, you trade a piece of your future for a fragment of safety. That safety, while appealing, is deceptive. It promises rest but delivers regret. It promises stability but births stagnation. You were not designed to carry dreams in storage. You were designed to deliver them into reality, and the process of delivering what is in you will always be uncomfortable. There will be risk, there will be rejection, there will be moments of loneliness, but there will also be life, real, full, vibrant life that only comes when you are moving in alignment with who you were born to be. To live fully means to stop asking what is easiest and start asking what is right. It means refusing to settle for average when excellence is within you. It means turning down comfort when conviction is calling. It means standing firm in seasons where everything in you wants to retreat. Living fully means you don't let fear decide your direction. You don't let opinions dictate your obedience. You don't let failure stop your faith. Instead, you rise, you stretch, you pursue, you trust. People often think fullness of life comes from accumulation. More things, more recognition, more experiences. But true fullness comes from alignment. When your life aligns with your purpose, there is a flow, a rhythm, a divine energy that fuels you. You may be tired in body, but your spirit is alive. You may face trials, but you do not lose joy. You may be misunderstood, but you are not lost. That kind of life cannot be accessed while clinging to comfort. It is only found when you surrender to purpose, when you say yes to what challenges you, and when you allow yourself to be led into the unknown, trusting that what lies ahead is far greater than what lies behind. The comfort zone is a seductive illusion. It promises peace but slowly erodes purpose. It offers safety while silently stealing destiny. The truth is, you were never created for a life of containment. You were made to grow, to stretch, to impact, to lead, and to transform the world around you. Every step you take outside your comfort zone is a step into the territory of your potential. It is where faith becomes action, where fear is confronted, where gifts are awakened, and where purpose is revealed. If you stay where it's familiar, you may survive, but you will never soar. But if you dare to leave what is safe, you will discover what is sacred. Real life, meaningful life, purposeful life begins where comfort ends, so move forward. Even if your knees shake, even if your voice trembles, even if the path is unclear, because the fullness of who you are is waiting on the other side of your courage.